Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Registrar, and the officers of the Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, I welcome all of you to this continued nursing education program organized by RGHS through the Zoom platform provided by Echo India Limited. Without wasting much time, I welcome everybody and request our Honorable Vice Chancellor to kindly provide the opening remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Mahendra. Thank you. And I would like to wish all of you a good afternoon to each one of you, for all the delegates who have logged in, and also to the speakers for today's program. Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences has been organizing such continued nursing education programs, series of programs, and which is intended to train the healthcare professionals in managing COVID cases more effectively. Because knowledge is always power. Whenever we have a correct knowledge, we'll be more confident, we'll be more self-sufficient to treat any patient for that matter. The more knowledge we gain, the more experience we become, and that experience comes in treating the patients. That is the motto of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, and more so, whatever information that we try to give here through experts, through subject experts, it's all authentic information, and of course, that would definitely help most of the delegates, and there will be a lot of take-home points, take-home messages, which will definitely again help them to use it in practical sense. So today's program is two topics. One is based on the proning of patients. How does proning help patients in COVID patients when they are in distress, when they are hypoxic? Why proning is necessary, and in what way it is going to help patients, and that can be seen practically. And whenever patients are done, awake proning or proning done, then the hypoxic levels improves, the oxygenation improves, and then patient gets better. So that is an accepted mode of treatment. And we have Dr. Prasanna telling us, discussing about this from Manipal Hospital. And I welcome her on behalf of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences. Namaste, madam. And I also welcome Mrs. Radhika from Kidwai Institute of Medical Sciences, where she would be talking on management of mucormycosis, or the black fungus that is raging at current problem nowadays. A lot of talk about black fungus going on, more so because one, it is a more fatal disease. Mortality is very high here. And secondly, the drugs are not available very freely. We are now really struggling to get the drug because we are not prepared that so many cases would occur, in a short span of time. That is what is a concern. So how it is managed in the COVID wards is what Mrs. Radhika is going to speak. Welcome, madam, from Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences.
Thank you, sir.
These two topics are quite relevant because one is a life-saving, position which helps patients to get back to normalcy. Mucormycosis has to be recognized early, and then if treatment is given much earlier, it's going to save life again. So these are very relevant topics. I'm sure the delegates who have logged in will benefit a lot and learn a lot from the subject experts. Over to Dr. Mahendra. Please carry on with the proceedings.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. I now request Professor Radhika to kindly start the presentation.
Thank you, sir. I think Prasanna ma'am is going to start the session.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Madam, the floor is all yours.
Good afternoon, all. Am I audible?
Yes, madam.
Good afternoon, all. Thank you for the opportunity from the ECHO projects as well as from Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences. As sir introduced, we will just start the session quickly. It is about effect of prone position for COVID patients is my topic. So first, what is prone? What is prone, or in the other term, prone ventilation, also called as proning? So what are we going to learn today? We are going to learn what is the meaning of prone position, why we are doing, purpose and indications of prone positions, and contraindications for prone positions, as well as what are all the materials and manpower required to do the prone position, and how to do for the conscious and unconscious patients, as well as quickly we will share a video of demonstration. And I have taken 2 case studies to show the effect of COVID patients. So what do you mean by prone position? Prone position, also known as prone ventilation. It is a process of turning a patient with precise and safe motions from their back onto the abdomen. So the individual is lying face down. This is medically accepted position to improve the breathing as well as comfort and oxygenation of the patient. It is extremely beneficial in the COVID patients with compromised breathing comfort, mostly during the home isolation or in the hospital. Both places we can follow this. So what are the principles behind prone position? Prone position result in even alveolar ventilation and reduced compression of the lung by the heart, as well as less pressure from the abdominal contents, and to improve the drainage of the secretions from the visceral layer. So here, when the patient is on, we will just explain with a picture. So when the patient is on prone position, we'll be able to see that when the patient is on supine position, the basal lobe of the lungs is having less oxygen supply, or there is no enough gas exchange takes place. Whereas when the patient is on supine, here the patient is on supine, the lungs are free from the pressure from the diaphragm, as well as good gas exchange takes place from the alveoli. So that is how it increases from the points. It results in even alveolar ventilation all across the lungs. There will be even alveolar ventilation, and there is not much compression of the abdominal contents or the heart over the lungs. So lungs will be free to expand, increase the respiration, and increase the thoracic volume as well. So there'll be good gas exchange. This is the physiology. And what is the purpose and indication for COVID patients? Here, prone position, as we have seen, there is an increase in ventilation, and this makes all the alveolar open and makes breathing easy for the patient. And proning is required only when the patient feels breathing difficulty and the saturation is less than 94. And also, we have to monitor the saturation if the patient is on prone, along with other vitals like temperature, blood pressure, and blood sugar. Missing out hypoxia, that is compromised oxygen circulation in prone position, may lead to worsening of complications. So it should be monitored. Saturation should be monitored. And timely proning and maintaining good ventilation could save many lives. So we have to determine when the saturation drops. When we put on prone, we can save the life of the patient. So precautions, what precautions we have to take when proning the patients? Avoid proning for an hour or two after meals, and maintain proning for only as much time as easily tolerated. If the patient is conscious, they will feel discomfort, so we can turn them back. And one may prone for up to 16 hours a day for ventilator patients and repeat in multiple cycles. So this will be monitored through the ABG, and there will be an intensivist to supervise, so we can determine when to prone and when to be in supine. And pillows may be adjusted slightly to alter the pressure areas and also for the comfort of the patients. So they can turn according to their wish if the patient is conscious. And these are all the pressure points which we have to monitor. The head, elbow, chin, chest, reproductive organ, knee, and toes are the pressure sore areas prone if they are on continuous 16 hours and all. So we can use a hydrofoam dressing which is kept in the bony prominences to prevent the pressure injury. So what are the contraindications for the prone position? Pregnancy and deep vein thrombosis. Already patient is treated for deep vein thrombosis within 48 hours, and major cardiac conditions and unstable spine or any femur or pelvic fracture patients, we should not put prone position. And also it is and also any abdominal compartment syndrome or any abdominal surgery, and patient who is extremely obese, we should not do, and patients who have mediastinal intercostal chest tubes is contraindicated. So there are some complications as such in prone position, which is airway obstruction if the mouth gag is not taken care, and pressure injuries on the weight bearing parts of the body. So as I told, we can prevent it by using foam dressing, and facial edema, corneal ulceration, and enteral feeding intolerance. So this can be prevented, but we can have a watch on this. So what are the materials and men required for prone position? For conscious patients, only 4 pillows and 1 person is enough to do this. And for unconscious patients, we need unconscious patients or ventilated patients, we need enough pillows, which is wrapped with a towel, and 7 person, including ICU consultants or ICU intensivists, doctors, and head ring with enough bed sheets, water gloves, gauze pad, with a transport and personal protective equipments, and oral care supplies and eye lubricants. So what are the method for prone position? For conscious patients, we can use the pillow below the neck, and 1 or 2 pillow below the chest, and 2 pillows below the shins. Shins is nothing but the in front of the ankle. So we can see the picture, we can understand. So 1 pillow under the neck, 1 pillow under the abdomen, and 2 pillow under the shins, that is in front of the legs. So it will be, patient will be turned one side and lying comfortably. If the patient is conscious and able to tolerate, if he or she is not able to tolerate, they can ask for help and come back to spine as well as immediately. And the method for unconscious patients. So for unconscious patient, we need more help. So before turning the unconscious patients, we have to prepare the patient, ensure that emergency equipments are available, and we will correctly position all the tubes and invasive lines. If any inotropes or anything is going on, only that can be going, remaining we can stop. Always turn the patient in the direction of the mechanical ventilator. So which side we are going to turn, accordingly we can position the mechanical ventilator. Then make sure that the patient tongue is inside her mouth, so we can use the mouth gag airway to maintain this. Then ensure properly sedated and paralyze the patient. Remove all the monitor leads before positioning, and also at last we have to remove the saturation. We should not take much time in prone positioning the ventilator patient. So this is how we will prone ventilate the patients, and everything will be at the head end of the patient. And if the patient has any catheter or any other chest tubes, it should be brought at the side without disturbing the front part. So we will see how to do this. So the link also I have shared in the bibliography. So in depth I'm not sharing, but quickly I will show you how to do.
We'll turn the patient 45 degrees towards himself, and the people on the other side will put the sheet in.
So we will turn the patient, which side we are going to turn, we have to go take to the other opposite side of the bed end and cover the patient with the pillows, how we are going to position, and then cover with another sheet over the pillow, then turn the patient. So this video I'm sharing you, but quickly I'm just dragging it to understand. So after keeping all this, we will position the patient and we'll take the support. And there'll be 7 people required, 3 at each side and 1 intensive doctor at the head end to take care of the ET tube and turn the head. So there is only, in supine, we can turn the head in any direction, but in prone position, the head cannot be turned. So we should be careful with that.
Madam, excuse me, madam. The video is not
Beyond
visible.
that,
Madam.
the respiratory therapist will keep
Only sound is visible. Video is not visible, madam. Please check, madam. Sorry to interrupt.
Video is not visible. Okay, it is. Am I audible now?
Yes, madam, you are audible, madam.
Okay, I have shared the video. They can watch themselves. I will. So while turning the patient, unconscious patient, there are 7 people required, 3 people at each side of the patient, and one person, intensive doctor at the head end to take care of the ventilation of the patient. They have to position the patient supine first and take to the farther end where we are going to turn the patient. Then keep the pillow and one sheet above the patient. Then 3 people are there, so they have to wrap nicely like a pillow. The patient himself will be nicely wrapped with the pillow. Then taking to the opposite side, we will quickly turn the patient. At the count of 3, we have to turn the patient reverse. So then we can position the head. The person who is taking care of the head will take care immediately. Along with the 3rd count, they will turn the patient reverse. Then they'll connect the ventilator. If they watch the video, it will be easy to understand. After turning the patient, we have to reconnect all the medicines, whatever is going on. And if the patient is on any catheter, that has to be connected back. I have shared the link of the video at the end. So you can also share it to them. So unconscious patients, we have to be careful. 16 hours continuously, they can be in prone position. After that, again, we can reverse. So when the patient is on continuous ventilator, 16 hours, they will monitor the ABG and taper the oxygen level. FiO2 will be reduced and see that whether the patient is improving in the oxygen status or not. Then later, again, once they put in supine, they may increase the FiO2, and that will be 2 or 3 hours they will keep. Again, 16 hours they will keep prone. So supine and prone will be repeated. So in our hospital, I have just taken an example of 2 patients. One patient, Mrs. 52 years female patient, admitted on 5th day after the RT-PCR with 89% of saturation. She was on and off oxygen support after admission. It was not decided prone position immediately, but after 3 days of hospitalization, prone position was started. So here we strictly follow based on the doctor's order, we will do the prone position. After 3 days of the prone position, she maintained oxygen support and has oxygen improved to 100%. So after that, the oxygen level, that is, she was on NRBM mask and with oxygen of 15 liters, then slowly tapered the oxygen level. Slowly oxygen support tapered, and on 10th day of the hospitalization, patient was discharged without oxygen support. Patient was gone to home without any oxygen. And another patient who is a 36-year-old male admitted on 6th day of RT-PCR report. His saturation was 89 and he was on 15 liter through NRBM mask at the time of admission. On the same day, prone position was started and he was on intermittent prone position, and slowly oxygen support tapered and discharged on the 7th day of the hospital itself. So we have seen that the patient who is on prone position, surely their oxygen level is improved. But we here in hospital, we under the supervision of doctors or under the order of the doctors, we prescribe them. Not every patient is on prone. Whomever we identify, they will improve. Surely they are improving. So these are the 2 case studies we have taken, but many patients are there who has gone with less oxygen support at home, some patients without oxygen support at all at the time of discharge. So prone position is effective in improving the saturation of the patient for COVID patients mainly. So these are all the references I have taken. I have shared the link of the video also, how to do for unconscious patient prone positioning. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, madam. We can continue with the next speaker.
A very warm good afternoon to one and all.
Good afternoon. Please continue.
I hope I'm sharing my screen.
Not yet, madam. Your screen is,
Visible, ma'am.
yes, yes. Yes.
A very warm good afternoon to one and all, and welcome you all to this session. As we all know, the year 2020 and 2021 are the years of ongoing pandemic of COVID-19. Before we could recover from it, there is another blow of increase in the incidence of fungal infections among COVID and post-COVID patients, which is really challenging for healthcare professionals to handle both the pandemic and the epidemic together. And it is very important for we nurses, being the frontline warriors of healthcare system, to understand the magnitude of a disease and to update ourselves to face these challenges in our workplace and to plan a better nursing care to our patients. So I'm Radhika from Kidwai Institute of Oncology. Would like to take a topic on nursing management of patients with black fungus. So before we could move on to the nursing management of patients with black fungus, let's revise our knowledge on black fungus first. So let's see what are these fungi. These fungi are ubiquitous. They live everywhere in the surroundings. A healthy immune system protects the majority of population from developing this serious disease, because in a healthy adult, fungi are unable to penetrate the epithelial layer of the first layer of the defense, and fail to cause the disease. Whereas in the weakened immune system, the fungi are able to penetrate the normal mucosal barrier and invade into the host tissue and causes the disease. So that is why these fungal infections are very common among immunocompromised patients. So let's move on to the black fungus. What is this black fungus? The best example for this black fungus is the fungus formation that we see on the bread. This black fungus, in a medical term, otherwise called as mucormycosis. So let's see what is this mucormycosis. Mucormycosis is, or a black fungal infection, is a serious fungal infection caused by a group of molds called mucormyocytes. This often affects the sinuses, lungs, skin, brain, and rarely gastrointestinal tract. The molds live in the environment, particularly in the air, soil, and in the decaying organic matters such as leaves, composite piles, and animal dung. Why this mucormycosis is very serious? Because it is having an average fatality rate of 54% according to CDC. The death rate is very high with this mucormycosis. That is why the disease is very serious. So let's move on to the causes and risk factors of this disease. Any factors that suppresses the immunity of a person will lead to mucormycosis, will be a cause for mucormycosis. So the causes are like uncontrolled diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. As we all know, diabetic patients are prone for many diseases and also for fungal infections, because increased sugar level in their body will be a good breeding ground for microorganisms. The other causes like cancer and chemotherapy, in which the patient's immunity will be very low. The next one is organ transplantation, in which patients are treated with immune modulators and corticosteroids. Again, they are low with the immunity, so they are prone for mucormycosis. The other causes, patients who are on high dose of long-term steroids, or patients who are on long-term steroid use. The other causes are like malnutrition, again where immunity will be low. Excess iron therapy, because the fungus requires excess iron for its multiplication. So in the presence of iron, they multiply faster. So excess iron therapy is also a cause. Next one is neutropenia. Neutropenia is a component of our immune system, which is specially meant to fight against these fungal infections. When these neutrophils are less in the blood, we are prone for fungal infections again, especially for this mucormycosis. And any skin injury or burns. When the skin loses its barrier, okay, when there is skin injury or burns, the fungus can directly invade into the wound and causes mucormycosis. The other causes like metabolic or respiratory acidosis, where patient will have deficient phagocytic reactions against fungal infection. Phagocytic reaction will not be efficient like a healthy immune person in case of metabolic and respiratory acidosis. The other causes, HIV and AIDS, they're also immunologically compromised and prone for opportunistic infections. So these are some of the causes for fungal infections. But in today's scenario or in today's situation, the main cause for this mucormycosis, or very oftenly we are seeing this mucormycosis among COVID-19 patients. Why? Why mucormycosis? Why COVID patients are affected with mucormycosis? The first and foremost, high dependency of COVID patients on oxygen and poor hygiene of the humidifiers used in the cylinders or in the oxygen concentrators. The next one is, again, COVID patients treated with corticosteroid therapy will be a risk for mucormycosis. And patients who are treated in ICUs, especially on mechanical ventilation and poor hygiene of the hospital, because mucormycosis is one of the nosocomial infection where patient acquires this infection in the hospital because of the contaminated utensils, tubings, equipments, or poor sanitation of the hospital. The other reason why it is common in COVID-19 patients is patients having comorbidities. With the COVID-19, if any COVID patients having comorbid diseases like diabetes mellitus, cancer, or organ transplantation, or HIV/AIDS, again, there will be more prone for this mucormycosis. Another causes like repeated use of unwashed dirty mask for more than 2 to 3 days. The chances of inhaling the fungal spore will be more. So these are the causes. These are some of the causes why COVID-19 patients are more prone for mucormycosis. If a COVID-19 patient affected with this mucormycosis, we call them as CAM, that is COVID-associated mucormycosis. Let's move on to the routes of infection. We can acquire this mucormycosis in 3 ways, that is through inhalation, inoculation, and ingestion. Only these are the 3 ways how infection can happen to an individual. And very important note is that the mucormycosis is not contagious. It will not spread from one person to other person. Only we acquire either through inhalation, contact inoculation, or through ingestion. Moving on to the signs and symptoms. Based on the signs and symptoms, we have different types of mucormycosis. So let's see the signs and symptoms of mucormycosis. Headache, ptosis or vision loss, orbital cellulitis, nasal congestion, epistaxis, facial pain, and swelling. If these symptoms are present, we can call that patient as having rhinocerebral mucormycosis. They'll be categorized under rhinocerebral mucormycosis, and this is the main type or of mucormycosis where COVID patients are coming with. COVID and post-COVID patients are coming with. We'll see the other clinical types and manifestations. Like patients who are having severe cough, breathing difficulty, they may have pulmonary mucormycosis. We categorize them under pulmonary mucormycosis. The person who is having a persistent headache with mental status changes, we can categorize them under cerebral mucormycosis. And if a person is having severe abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and a black patch in the oral cavity, black necrotized patch in the oral cavity, we can categorize them under GI and oral mucormycosis. And if a patient is having a blackish necrotized patch on the skin, we can categorize them under cutaneous mucormycosis. So these are some of the clinical manifestations or signs and symptoms of mucormycosis, and fever will be a common symptom you can see in all types of mucormycosis. Let's move on to the diagnostic evaluation of mucormycosis. We can diagnose the disease with a detailed health history, where we can ask the patient history about the illness or previous illness, or we can rule out the causes through health history. Next, physical examination, where we can observe for clinical manifestations or signs and symptoms that the patient is having, and routine investigations or other investigations. Under other investigations, we can go for a routine blood test. Here, in the routine blood test, mainly, we are going to rule for neutrophils and biomarkers to rule out the infections. Next, endoscopic evaluation to rule out the blackish necrotized area in the internal organs, especially inside the nose, sinuses, and in case of GI mucormycosis in the intestine, we can go for endoscopic evaluation. Next, we go for biopsy. We can take a tissue of affected part and send it for histopathological examination to rule out the disease. And the next one is bronchoalveolar lavage. This is a diagnostic evaluation where we collect a fluid from the deeper parts of the bronchus and the alveoli and send it for histopathological examination to rule out the disease. So with all these investigations, we also can go for radiological imaging like X-ray, CT, and MRI to rule out the disease. So these are the diagnostic evaluations, how we can rule out the disease. Next, we'll move on to the medical management of a black fungus. Like first and foremost, early diagnosis. As early we diagnose the illness, we can prevent the severity of illness. We can prevent the severity of illness with early diagnosis. So early diagnosis is very important. Reversal of risk factors and treat the underlying illness. We need to treat the underlying illness so that we can treat or we can prevent mucormycosis. Prompt management of hyperglycemia and acidosis, as these two are the major cause for mucormycosis. We need to treat these two. Cessation of immunosuppressive drugs. Again, immunity is very important to fight against mucormycosis. So we can cease the immunosuppressive drugs based on the patient condition. Then prompt administration of antifungal agents, that is amphotericin B. Then posaconazole and isovuconazole has some have some evidence of second line of therapy in mucormycosis. So these are the medical management for patients with mucormycosis. And in surgical management, we can go for surgical debridement of infected tissue should be urgently performed to limit the further spread of infection. If you are not doing in an initial stage, the spread of infection will be more. So first and foremost, a surgical debridement is essential. If the disease is advanced, then we have to go for excision of the affected part. So with the surgical management as an adjunct therapy, hyperbaric oxygenation is also advised. In hyperbaric oxygen therapy, the increased oxygen pressure improves the ability of the neutrophils to fight against the fungi and facilitate wound healing. So hyperbaric oxygen therapy will also be advised. So far, we have revised our knowledge on black fungus. Next, we'll move on to a very important part of today's topic, that is nursing management of mucormycosis. With the routine nursing management, I have listed some of the particular nursing management for patients with black fungus. First, assess the general condition of the patient, reassure the client, and blood glucose should be monitored closely. Maintain adequate systemic hydration based on the intake and output. Monitor patient clinically for response to detect the disease progression, whether patient is recovering or whether the condition is deteriorating, we need to observe. Administer humidified oxygen, because dry oxygen will again cause further damage to the airway and causes obstruction. So administer humidified oxygen, and special concentration to be given on oxygen humidifiers, because oxygen humidifiers are serving a source of infection to the patients. So use clean, sterile water for humidifiers. Change humidifier water every day. Otherwise, that will be the breeding ground for fungus. And through the same humidifier, patient will breathe, the fungus spores can enter into the patient's respiratory tract. Check the water levels at least twice daily and top up as necessary. Once a week for the same patient or in between the patient, all the components of the humidifier should be soaked in a mild antiseptic solution for about 30 minutes, rinsed with a clean water and to be dried before using for the other patient. Disinfect the hospital equipments and utensils frequently, as this also serves as a source of infection. Maintain good hygiene and sanitation of the hospital. Avoid dirty linens. Maintain good personal hygiene of the patient. Antibiotics, antifungals, or steroids should be used as per the instruction of the physician with the proper dose and duration. And before the first dose of antifungal injection, give a test dose of 1 milligram IV to test for any adverse effect of the drugs. Infuse amphotericin over 2 to 6 hours by a separate line, as it may precipitate with the other substances. Protect from sunlight, as these antifungal drugs are photosensitive. Protect this from sunlight or cover the paint. Pre-amphotericin infusion, administer pre-medications as prescribed. Sometimes pre-medications are prescribed before amphotericin, like saline infusion or some of the potassium-sparing diuretics or hydrocortisone. So administer as per the prescription. Never use saline with amphotericin as it precipitates. So never use saline to mix the injection as it precipitates. You can use 5% dextrose or water for injection. Avoid amphotericin with other drugs, especially with the diuretics, as they can cause hypokalemia, because the major side effect of amphotericin is hypokalemia. So we have to avoid other drugs which can cause hypokalemia. And avoid with the digoxin, as hypokalemia can cause digoxin toxicity. And monitor patients for side effects of drugs. When patient is on antifungal drugs, the usual side effects are like fever, chills, nausea, vomiting, and hypokalemia. And these, especially the amphotericin is nephrotoxic. So patient may have edema, so impaired urinary pattern. So these things to be observed closely. So these are some of the points for nursing management of black fungus patients. Next, I have a nursing process. Okay, based on a chief complaints, like most of the COVID patients, post-COVID or post-COVID patients are coming with the initial complaints of pain, ineffective airway clearance, and edema. So based on that, I had formed a nursing process. Kindly have a look on that. The chief complaints of patients is like pain, nasal congestion, and patient is treated with amphotericin B injection. So they have that side effects and edema. So we'll see how our nursing process goes on for this patient. Because of the time constraint, I just have listed the nursing diagnosis and the interventions only. So first nursing diagnosis will be like acute pain related to increase in sinus pressure, secondary to inflammation of the paranasal sinuses. So interventions will be like assess the patient's characteristics of pain, assess the level of pain in pain scale, additional stressors or sources of discomfort to be removed, put off the light when not needed. A bright light can cause, again, patient usually will have eye pain. So to avoid bright light, put off the light when not in use. Visitors to be controlled to reduce the further stress. Provide peaceful and quiet environment to facilitate rest. And administer analgesics as prescribed. Next nursing diagnosis will be like ineffective airway clearance related to presence of copious thick nasal secretions secondary to inflammation of the sinuses. The interventions for this is like assess the rate and depth of respiration, assess the nasal secretions and sputum for color, amount, odor and consistency, because a thick sputum can block the nasal passages. Assess the patency of nasal cavity, administer saline nebulization, which could give instant relief from nasal congestion, provide nasal irrigation with topical amphotericin or with saline, provide optimal positioning such as Fowler's position to facilitate comfort, teach the importance of ambulation and frequent position changes to promote lung expansion. Because of the nasal congestion, the inflow and outflow of air will be restricted. So patient will be at high risk for getting atelectasis. So teach the importance of ambulation and frequent position changes to promote the lung expansion. So our third nursing diagnosis will be like fluid volume excess related to renal injury, secondary to amphotericin regimen. The interventions will be like monitor the vital signs, assess the patient's intake output closely. Injection amphotericin causes hypokalemia. So during the treatment, creatinine and potassium levels to be monitored every day. Maintain adequate fluid volume by maintaining the balanced intake and output. Monitor patient weight every day and watch for edema. Administer potassium supplements as prescribed, because usually patient will have hypokalemia with amphotericin regimen. So avoid amphotericin with other nephrotoxic drug, because amphotericin is a nephrotoxic drug. So avoid amphotericin with other nephrotoxic drug. So our fourth nursing diagnosis will be like anxiety related to lack of client knowledge about disease and medical procedures, economic status and stress. And now adding on to this, unavailability of the bed, unavailability of the drug also will cause anxiety among patients. So assess the level of anxiety. Some patients appear agitated and irritable during the course of hospitalization. Some patient experiences diaphoresis, urine urgency and frequency. Acknowledge the patient feeling. Be supportive and approachable to the patient and the family. Educate the patient and family about the disease condition, treatment modalities, and probable side effects and strategies to cope up with those side effects. Advise patient to reduce the stress by listening to music. If they are not interested to listening to the music, any activity that can relieve their stress can be performed. So those were the actual problems of the patients. So next we'll move on to the potential problems of the patients. Next thing is risk for non-compliance to treatment regimen related to duration of the treatment, secondary to financial issues. As I told, at present condition, and even medicines are not available. So there are risks for non-compliance to treatment. So our interventions will be like assess the patient's health perceptions and knowledge, assess whether patient and family members are ready to comply with the therapy recommended, educate the patient and family members on the treatment regimen that the patient will undergo and expected side effects such as nausea, vomiting, hypokalemia, nephrotoxicity, and the ways to cope up with them. If patient knows the side effects initially only, they'll be prepared to take the medicine. Otherwise, they'll be a bit scared to take so. Create awareness among patient and family regarding the importance of completing the prescribed treatment. Motivate the patient to follow the treatment plan with the immediate family members. Any one of the family members should have a keen observation on the patient treatment process. Next problem is like risk for complications related to disease process. Our interventions will be like assess the patient for symptoms like frontal headache, photophobia, ptosis, edema, chemosis, vision loss, or any purulent discharge. It indicates the infection, papilledema, retinal hemorrhage, and necrosis. Because if these symptoms are present, the disease is getting into the next stage. So we need to assess for the presence of these symptoms. Observe for changes in the mental status. Encourage to complete the treatment regimen to ensure and prevent reoccurrence of infections. Advise regular follow-up visits to hospital after discharge. Educate patient on preventive measures of black fungus. So this is the nursing process for patients with mucormycosis. So how we can educate? This nursing process continued with the health education. Advise patients about washing hands frequently, wearing clean, dry mask so that individual do not end up inhaling the fungal spores, strengthen the immune system and eat healthy diet, advise to maintain normal blood sugar, regular follow-up after discharge, maintain good personal and environmental hygiene, follow strict treatment regimen even after the discharge, avoid activities that involve close contact to soil or dust because fungal chances of inoculation of fungus will be more if they have any cuts or wounds. Wear shoes, long pants and long sleeved shirt when doing outdoor activities. Clean skin injuries well with the soap and water, especially if they have been exposed to soil or dust. So this is a health education for patients with mucormycosis. Hope the session was a bit useful in adding some more points to your existing knowledge. Hoping that I will conclude my topic. As I told, nurses have an inevitable role as a frontline warriors in caring patients with black fungus infection in this pandemic. The key lies in early identification and treating the underlying condition. Nurses need to understand the magnitude of the disease and give adequate teaching on prevention, early identification, and management of the disease. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. So as we had a lot of requests from the participants to play the video, so I request Gautam to play the video for all the participants regarding the prone position. Prasanna madam, please, you can also involve in this.
Ready? In this video, they have nicely demonstrated how to prone the patient. So we can watch it. So 7 people required. 1 person will be at the head end, who will be like a ICU doctor or a respiration therapist. And 3% on right side, 3% on left side. And we have to disconnect any except important drug. We can disconnect everything. So in this first, they will turn the patient little lateral and keep a sheet under the patient so that they can easily move the patient. So over the sheet, again, two more pillows, how we are going to place, one over the chest, one over the abdomen. Abdomen one we can remove after the supine, after turning to prone position. Now we will, before turning, we will keep like this. Then over this, one more sheet. So after placing pillows and the sheet, we have to roll nicely at the sides, both the sides. And at the count of 3, they will turn the patient into supine. So if the patient is connected to ventilator, the ventilator will be in standby mode and they will do manually ambu. So while turning time, the person will not do ambu, they will hold the ET tube without disconnecting. So we can see now how they are turning the patient to prone. The count of 3, 1, 2, 3. So we have to take at the one side. Wherever is the ventilator, opposite side we have to take. Then to the ventilator side, we have to do the prone. So here mostly COVID patients are obese. We have to slowly do this. That is from supine to corner of the bed, then lateral, then turn prone. So one person, the person who's at the head end will be the leader. So here you can see, now the patient is in prone and immediately we can connect the saturation and the ventilator. Then remaining whatever to be arranged, we can arrange. So first one, monitoring the patient is important. So we have to connect the saturation and this. So 2 hours once the head can be turned right side and left side. So this is how when unconscious or ventilator patients will be turned. And we can connect the ventilator and all the monitors. Right arm will be flexed near the head and left arm will be extended.
Prasanna ma'am, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Yeah, so is it done, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am, done, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Was it audible what I spoke?
Yes, yes, it was
Okay.
audible. Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
What to you, Mahendra sir? So as we have come to an end of excellent presentation by both the speakers, that is Mrs.
Yeah, hello,
Yes, sir, please, sir.
hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. You're audible.
Really? Are we in time for the question answer session?
Yes, sir. Both the speakers have completed their.
I request Dr. Rupashri to kindly start the question answer session.
Thank you, sir. So very good afternoon to everyone. So I thank Mrs. Prasanna and Radhika Madam for their wonderful presentation, which was very much liked by all the participants. We have got a lot of comments in the comments box appreciating your presentation. Thank you so much, ma'am. I will take up the question answer sessions. So first question is like, is prone position is good for normal persons also? Prasanna ma'am, please.
Huh. Yes, ma'am. Actually, there is not much complication is there. There will be mild deoxygenation will be there after some time, but automatically, naturally, our body will turn to supine. Even in sleep, some child we used to see that they'll be in prone position only, they will sleep. So some people, it will be comfortable.
Right.
So actually now due to COVID, it is used as a treatment. Even normal person also can sleep, no problem in it.
Okay. So we have a question regarding mucormycosis. So is there any natural or food which can prevent or it can avoid mucormycosis?
I think a healthy diet itself will improve immune power. So when immunity is good, naturally we can fight against the fungal infections.
Right.
There is no such particular natural foods as of I know for preventing mucormycosis, ma'am.
Right. So, and another question is for regarding mucormycosis. Already you have explained, but as there is a question, I'm taking it up. What are the medicines, currently available medicines for mucormycosis, and is there any vaccine for mucormycosis?
The medicines for mucormycosis are amphotericin B,
And participants, okay, we have one hand raise option. Joycey KN, please ask your question. Yes, go ahead.
Actually, I just have a question for the black fungus. Even for the patients who are on home isolation, though they are not admitted, not on oxygen, or they are not on any steroids in home isolation, there are cases where we have encountered there are black fungus cases.
Thank you. Mani.
hello.
Hello. I just have a question, like what could be the reason for that when patients are still on home isolation without any steroids and even without any diabetic symptoms, or when without any kind of diabetic problems, still patients are coming up with the problems of black fungus. And the second question is this black fungus something very similar to this white fungus also is there, and yellow fungus is also there, which is more complicating than the black fungus? Is the treatment schedule same what you are using in the hospital? I just wanted to know that. Thank you.
Okay. For the first answer for the first question, though patient is home isolated without being on without oxygen or not a diabetic state, definitely after the second wave of COVID-19 or COVID-19, the immunity of a person is low. And as I told, we live in an environment where fungus also is living with us. We inherit this fungal infection either through ingestion, inhalation, or through inoculation, or any one of these forms through our surroundings. Only then will be affected with the disease. So the person who is not a diabetic, person who is not on chemotherapy, or person who is not on immunosuppressant drugs, might be his immunity will be low, or the mask what they're using will be a reason for mucormycosis. And answer to the next question, that is a white fungus, black fungus, or the other fungus, whether it is same. Usually fungus have the characteristics of same, but each fungus is different. At present, the incidence of black fungus is more, so I know more about black fungus. So even the white and the yellow fungus is also treated with the amphotericin, of course. And compared to black fungus, the yellow fungus is quite dangerous.
Right. So another question from Smita Ranjit: is mucormycosis is contagious, and is it mandatory to follow stringent wearing of PPEs as we do while caring COVID patients, while handling mucormycosis patients?
Okay. As I told, mucormycosis is not contagious. As it is not contagious, there is no need to wear for the PPE. But in COVID, and when we are treating the COVID and post-COVID cases, still there might be a carriers of COVID. So to prevent that, we are using PPEs, not to treat the patients with black fungus. They are not contagious.
Right. So we have a question from Mr. Satish K. Please ask your question. Satish.
Hello.
Yes. Please unmute yourself and ask the question. Satish K.
Okay.
Yeah, you are audible.
Madam,
Ask.
okay, madam. Okay. Madam, my question is, since 1.5 year, nearly 2 years, we are using the same drugs which have been used in previous year, same that dexamethasone and hydrocortisone, these all steroid. Nowadays, this black fungus is happening. Why is not happened in previous year? Same drugs we used in previous year, same dexamethasone used and same oxygen we have given during in hospital setup. Everything has been same only. Why it's happening that black fungus not happened in the previous year? Why it's happening in this second wave of COVID-19?
Okay, can I answer, ma'am?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So in the second wave of COVID-19, actually the oxygen dependency is more compared to the first wave. And the number of incidences of COVID-19 is also more compared to the first wave. And because people were panicked and without medical intervention, they have taken corticosteroids by themselves. And because of the increased use of corticosteroids, the black fungus is happening where it didn't happen in the first wave. People were not much into the corticosteroid treatment in the first wave. Whereas in the initial protocol of COVID-19 second wave treatment was also added. Most of the patient without taking a prescription or going to the doctor and sharing the prescription between the patients. So unscientific way of taking corticosteroids, which reduced the immunity. So that might be a reason why the black fungus incidences are more after COVID-19, second wave of COVID-19, and dependability of the oxygen. Or the other one more cause for this black fungus, why it is high after second wave.
Right. So another
One more
question.
thing I want to tell, see when we take the immunity of a patients, okay, it differs from person to person. If you take HIV, India is the third leading country where we have large number of HIV cases, but we didn't have the incidence of black fungus to this extent what we have now after the second wave of COVID. The main reason behind that was the lymphocytes and the neutrophils. In a HIV patients where the neutrophils are healthy, the lymphocytes are affected. That is why though they're immunocompromised, they are not affected much with the black fungus. Whereas in COVID-19 patients, post-COVID-19 patients, if we take, they're suffering with the neutropenia, where the neutrophils are affected, which is meant for the defense against fungal infection. So because of deficient neutrophils, also patients are getting this black fungus.
Okay, right. Okay, so thank you. And we have some questions related to again. So first question, I'll sum up these questions and I'll ask you. First one, is the use of steamers, household steamers, can be a cause for black fungus?
Yeah, a few studies have shown that the most frequent use of steamers is also a cause for black fungus. How means because of repeated steam taking, our nasal mucosa is getting affected or damaged, where very easily this fungus can inoculate and cause the disease. Yes, few studies have shown that steam, more of steam also is not safe.
Safe. Okay. And another question is there any chance of getting black fungus for a patient who have recovered from COVID after that is post-COVID? Is there any chance?
Yeah, there are chances. As I told, if patient is having like all these like immunocompromised status or less neutrophils or living in a contaminated area. So if patient is having these risks, definitely patient will have chances of getting. If the patient is immunologically good and protecting himself by following all the preventive measures, they'll be safe from the mucormycosis.
And another question is, which antiseptic should be used for cleaning humidifiers?
We can use Dettol or Savlon. Any mild antiseptic like Dettol or Savlon can be used to clean the humidifiers.
Right. Gautam, do we have any other hand raise option?
No, madam.
Okay. Participants, I request if you have any, you can hand raise or type in the chat box. And another question is, And is there any chance of getting the black fungus if a patient is treated with a remdesivir or any other drugs?
No, there is no association with the remdesivir and black fungus. Only thing, the patient's immunity, it is completely depending on the patient's immunity. It is not, no association with the remdesivir.
And one question was, what is the difference between amphotericin B and liposomal amphotericin B?
I think both, as of I know, both are same.
Okay. The mode of manufacturing is different and
Yeah.
the method of making the drug. Okay. I have a question from Suresh.
Okay.
Please ask the question. Suresh, please ask your question. Unmute yourself. Yes. Again, so some technical issues. Okay, a question from Mr. Pradeep. Pradeep, please ask your question.
There is a hand raise from Prince.
Yes, sir. Hello. My name is Pradeep, and I have a query that I have seen that in many of the cases, like COVID cases, what has happened is with RT-PCR positive, remdesivir is effective, and with RT-PCR negative, remdesivir is not an effective drug or line of treatment for COVID. Is it confirmed that it is actually there?
Sir, I think we have to restrict the questions with related to this particular speech that is prone. And we had exclusive programs on the use of remdesivir, ivermectin. You can refer our YouTube channel, RGHS YouTube channel, for all the detailed information regarding remdesivir, ivermectin, 2DG, etc. Please, if you have any question related to this specific topic, you can ask.
No, madam. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And a question from Ranjita. Do we have a risk of drug resistance with amphotericin?
Okay. As of now, we don't have a case of drug-resistant amphotericin. Might be in future we may, because if patient is having non-compliance with the treatment, if they don't follow the treatment regimen, resistance can happen to any of the microbes. So
Yes.
as of now, we don't have the cases. If non-compliance, we may get.
Right. So many questions repeated. I think you have already made it clear, but they are worried about, like, you please make one statement about the contagious nature of this black fungus.
Black fungus is not contagious. I told the route of infection is only through inhalation, inoculation, and ingestion. These are the only three routes where we can get the infection, and it is not contagious.
Okay. Right. So is black fungus was affecting is in India, or it has its incidences in other countries also?
It has its incidences in other countries. When we take a overall statistics, 70% of the cases are reporting from India.
Okay. And if a person is infected with the black fungus, gets cured, and is there any chance that he can get infected again?
Yeah, there is a chance. There are chances of getting reinfected.
Okay. We have a question from Shivanand Jyoti. Please ask your question. Ask your question. Shivanand Jyoti.
Not connected with audio.
Gautam. Not connected with audio.
Yes.
Dr. Rupashri, please move forward.
Yes, sir. So, Lakshmi, yes, ask your question.
Good evening, ma'am.
Yeah, good. Please go
My
ahead.
question is, they are saying for black fungus, it is only the surgery is possibility along with the amphotericin B. So is this without amphotericin B and surgery, any other alternative medicine can be used to treat black fungus infection?
Okay. Can I answer?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, ma'am, at present, we have the treatment option is surgical debridement or excision and amphotericin B. Surgical debridement is very important because those necrotized cells, if you don't remove, there will be further infection to the site. So to prevent that, surgical management is very important, debridement and the excision. With that, amphotericin B. With that, we have an adjunct therapy. We have hyperbaric oxygen therapy. There is no alternative therapy other than these three. And with the adjunct therapy, ICMR had now approved for the trials of low dose radiotherapy also, but that is not yet added in the treatment protocol yet. So no alternative treatment. We just have adjunct therapies with the amphotericin and surgery.
Right. Thank you. And a question was, can use of wet mask lead to mucormycosis?
Yes. The use of wet mask is also a risk for mucormycosis. Now, wet moisture, the fungus multiplies very faster.
Our children can be affected by black fungus.
Yes, they are more vulnerable.
Yes.
Children and old age people are more vulnerable. Even they can affect with the black fungus.
So participants, if you have any query regarding prone positioning, also post your questions. And there was a question, what will be the duration of treatment, normal regime for this black fungus?
For black fungus treatment regimen is injection amphotericin 5 to 10 mg per kg body weight, diluted in 200 ml of 5% dextrose or injection for water, can be given for over 6 to 12 hours for 14 to 21 days in the hospital. And after that, as a convalescent therapy, we can give isobuconazole or posaconazole orally 200 mg 3 times a day for 2 days, continued with 200 mg OD for 3 to 6 months. This will be a treatment regimen for mucormycosis.
Right. A question for Prasanna ma'am. Ma'am, what will be the difference what difference prone positioning will make in the level of oxygen saturation in one person?
If so, in supine position, if they have around 89, 90, in prone position, it will be 92, 93. So immediately itself within 1 or 2 hours. But it will not, when we turn to supine again, it will change down. So to increase the alveolar function, we can prone for long duration. Then later when they come to supine, it will be there. So that'll be 2 or 3 degree saturation will be difference, will be there, sure, compared to supine and prone.
And
now I saw one question, which food something after prone. Actually, if before proning, 2 hours gap should be there from meal to prone. So that is, there is no any food restriction and all. If unconscious patient, any rice tube feed is there, they will withhold for the 16 hours. They won't give it. For normal conscious patient, they can have the meal and wait for 1 or 2 hours. Then again, they can prone. So that is the protocol we can follow.
Yes. And in the demo video related to that, they had not worn PPE kit. So they were asking, is there any?
No, only for, it is actually demonstration purpose they have taken. And it is also only one of the staff only they have done. We were also trying to take, but it was very difficult to take. Then only I searched in YouTube, I got a nice video. They can fully see the theoretical part. Also, the doctor was explained before that. So that's why I shared the link. It is with the PP only we are doing.
Yes.
It is for demonstration purpose they have done.
Yes. Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, madam, please go ahead.
Madam, it's related to the black fungus. According to the statistics, I came to know that 70% of the cases are here, not in other countries. What may be the reason?
Can I answer, ma'am?
Yes.
Second leading country of having highest number of diabetic cases, and in which most of them are having uncontrolled diabetes. That is one of the reason why India is high in black fungus cases, ma'am.
So we need more awareness. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Here is a question for Prasanna ma'am. Whether pillow position and bed sheets change the therapeutic levels or the effectivity of prone, maybe the positioning of pillow, what is the role of that in increasing the saturation, especially with related to prone?
But treatment aspects, there won't be any change. We will continue all the medicines as it is only.
Yeah.
There is no change in the treatment regimen. Only if the saturation increases, gradually we will come down in the oxygen level only. Other medications and all, there is no change. We will continue as it is.
Yeah. Okay. And the positioning of pillow is very important.
Yes, positioning at the chest, that will increase the, the heart, lungs will be free to breathe when we position it properly. We should not keep in the abdomen. We should keep in the chest so that the diaphragm will be free. Okay.
So here is a question from Jency Thomas. Please ask your question.
Ma'am, do the COVID-19 positive patients all need to be worried about this black fungus?
No. No need to worry. Like all the post-COVID patients are not needed to worry actually about this black fungus. As I told, if patient is immunocompromised, having any comorbidities, and patient who are on corticosteroids only will have a risk of getting this. So need not to worry.
Right. So I think we have come to the. Yes, ma'am. I think you have answered all the questions. We have a lot of appreciation messages for both the speeches, that is for Prasanna madam and Radhika madam. Thank you so much. I'll hand the session to Dr. Mahendra sir. Over to you, sir. Dayanand sir. Over to you, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Audible, ma? Okay, right.
Yes.
Good afternoon, everybody. On behalf of the Vice Chancellor and Registrar of Rajiv Gandhi University of Health Sciences, I thank the today's speakers, Dr. Ms. Prasanna and Radhika B, for their very clear and informative talk. And on behalf of the Vice Chancellor and Registrar, we thank you very much, madam. And also you answered all the questions of the participants today. And we thank the ECHO India for their cooperation with the RGHS for conducting this program. And we thank all the officers of RGHS who are involved in this program. And we thank all the participants who took part in this program. And we thank the Kirti and Somshekar for their participation in this program. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Dr. Rupashri.
Yes, sir.
Next Tuesday's program.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, madam. And it is for the information of all the participants. This entire session will be made video and it will be available in official Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channels of RGHS. And you can watch it, and we will post this video tomorrow. You can log in and repeatedly watch this program and make use of it. Thank you so much, ma'am. So I'm going to announce the next program, which will be conducted in this forum on 1st June 2021, Tuesday, that is at 3 o'clock. The topic of the next session is preventing burnout among healthcare workers during COVID. So the speaker is Professor Dr. Ravish BN. He is head of the Department of Psychiatry, Mysore Medical College and Research Institute. Please do log in and make use of this program and continue to support this program. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gautam.
Thank you, Radhika madam.
Thank you, ma'am, for this opportunity. And
Thanks.
I would also express my thanks to my hospital authorities like medical director, medical superintendent, nursing superintendent, and grade 2 madams, and all the principal and vice principal and all the faculties of College of Nursing, Kidwai, for giving me this opportunity, and also to RJHS for giving this opportunity. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am, for giving the opportunity to present. As well, I thank our organization, Manipal Hospitals Whitefield, to give me the opportunity to present in Rajiv Gandhi University and ECHO projects. It's a great opportunity to meet you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Gautam.
I request everyone, please fill the feedback form we are shared in the chat box for today's session.
So please do log in on first at 3 o'clock for the next session. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Gautam, we can leave?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Gautam.
Thank you, ma'am.